There was a protagonist who wondered why he even existed. Sophia was a witch who could use all kinds of magic. Medel was a priestess capable of healing any wound. Claude was said to be the strongest hero in history. Mary was a thief who could see through any trap. Every one of them had the talent and ability worthy of being in a hero's party, and yet he had nothing. He felt that he only dragged everyone down. He believed he was nothing more than a burden, and still, he wondered why he continued to be doted on. Medel, the priestess, asked whether the bed was comfortable and mentioned that touching was fine as well. Mary, the thief, offered to give him a massage. Sophia, the witch, said she had made a drink that would wipe away his fatigue. Listening to all of this, Cross grew frustrated and shouted at them to stop messing with him. He pointed out that Claude was still scouting the area and that it would be bad if they were the only ones fooling around. Just then, Claude returned and asked what they were doing. He snapped that he would be the one to heal Cross. That day, Cross had defeated 50 monsters, while everyone else had taken down more than 150. Cross quietly wondered why they cared so much about someone like him, and everyone answered loudly that it was because he was a good guy. Cross muttered that that was what people said about someone without any redeeming qualities, and then said he would try harder. Cross mentioned that he would go gather ingredients for dinner before it got dark, and Mary offered to go with him. He replied that it was fine and that he could handle it himself, telling her to rest instead. Claude shouted for him to be careful. After Cross left, Claude nervously asked the others if they had noticed him, saying that he was just too lovable. They all began chattering, saying that Cross must have been tired as well, but that he was simply too sweet. One of them mentioned how cute he had looked earlier, with his face all red. Another said that he looked so cool and brave while fighting. Medel recalled getting to go on a village inspection alone with him. One of them remembered putting an arm around Cross. Someone else mentioned that Cross had personally handed them a drink. Another recalled getting to high-five him. While heading out, Cross noticed people training and thought about how energetic everyone was. He muttered to himself that the Demon King's forces had been overwhelming that day and that everyone must have been exhausted. He decided that it was time to push himself harder that day. Back at camp, everyone grew worried about why Cross was late. Claude wondered if he might have been kidnapped. Mary agreed, saying that Cross was cute after all. Medel said they needed to find him quickly, or maybe burn down the forest. Then Cross suddenly returned and apologized for being late. Everyone immediately asked where he had been. He replied that he had been looking around to prepare a feast for them. Claude told him that his kindness alone was filling enough. Medel then announced that it was time to eat, and Cross once again wondered why everyone doted on him so much. Mary remarked that Cross's cooking was too delicious. Medel said it was far better than royal court cuisine. Sophia claimed that she would not be able to eat anything except Cross's cooking anymore and wondered what she would do once their journey ended. Cross replied cheerfully that she was exaggerating and said that he would cook for her even after the journey ended. Claude joked that if Cross cooked it, he would eat poison mushrooms as if they were his favorite. Seeing this, Cross shouted that it was the one he had just picked and demanded to know why Claude was eating it. Later, they decided that they needed an early start the next day and that they should go to bed. While resting, Mary softly remarked that Cross was such a hard worker and that it was good for him. Claude asked whether Cross was not drinking a bit too much. Sophia told Cross that the day's outing had been really fun. On the other hand, Cross trained alone. He told himself that he needed to become faster and stronger. Cooking alone was not enough, and he did not want to remain useless forever. He wanted to stand and fight alongside everyone, and he absolutely refused to give up on that. Claude asked Mary how Cross was doing. She replied that he had been training as usual. Medel commented that he would probably keep going until dawn again, and Sophia added that he would surely come back completely beat up. Claude said that if Cross would just say that it was hard, they could abandon that world already. Mary replied that Cross would never say something like that. Claude agreed, saying that that was exactly why they would protect him, even if it cost them their lives. And so the journey continued without further danger. They defended villages from hordes of monsters and destroyed the Demon King's strongholds. Victory for the human side was then within reach. Ahead of them, a final presence revealed itself, declaring itself to be one of the 4 heavenly kings. They defeated it as well. Mary cheered that all 4 of those annoying foes had finally been taken care of. Claude told Cross that they had made it that far, and that only the Demon King remained. Cross felt happy, knowing that they could finally save the people who were suffering because of monsters. The people chanted that the heroes had finally arrived in their city. The king welcomed Claude, praising him for coming all the way to the kingdom. Claude bowed and thanked His Majesty for the warm welcome. The king told him that there was no need to be so formal and that he should relax. More importantly, since they had come so far, Claude said that once they were ready, they would set out to defeat the Demon King. Hearing Claude's words, the king replied that his kingdom would provide everything they needed. He told them to rest until the preparations were complete. He added that the hero's party must be tired, then glanced at Cross and remarked to Claude that he seemed to be carrying quite a heavy burden. The crowd began laughing and throwing out comments. Someone said that they felt sorry for the hero for having to carry such dead weight. Another wondered how Cross had even managed to worm his way into the party. Others called him useless and said that he should just disappear, and some even claimed that it was a crime for him to be seen standing beside the hero. Cross thought that even in this country, it was the same, and that he still was not used to it. Claude, Sophia, Mary, and Medel were furious, their expressions darkening with anger, but Cross asked them to calm down and requested that Claude hold back his anger until they reached the inn. Claude laughed and agreed, saying that it was all right, and joked that they should go wipe out a kingdom. Mary told him not to say it like he was going out for drinks. Cross then told Claude that if he let every little insult get to him, it would never end. Besides that, he added, the king was not entirely wrong either. Claude replied that it was not true. He said that it was because Cross was with them that he could be a hero, and that they could be a true hero party. Hearing those words, Cross thought to himself that it was true, and that there must still be something that he could do. It had been a long journey. Medel remarked that it had been about a year since they had set out. Hearing that, Mary felt that it had gone by in a flash. Cross said that it was finally coming to an end, and that they had made it to the Demon King's castle. He then asked Claude whether he would become king after returning to the kingdom, and followed up by asking everyone what they planned to do once they went back. Medel answered that she was thinking of becoming a sister at the church. Sophia said that she would continue researching magic. Mary said that she planned to return to the Thieves' Guild. Hearing their answers, Cross felt confused and quietly muttered that he had thought everyone wanted to marry Claude. What he heard instead felt completely impossible to him. Claude then asked Cross what he planned to do after returning. Cross replied that there were many things he wanted to try. He said that a carefree journey sounded nice, that opening a diner seemed fun, and that marriage might be nice too. Hearing this, Claude suggested that they go back and drink until morning, just the two of them. Cross reacted enthusiastically, saying that it sounded amazing and that they should all party through the night. And so they moved forward, and Claude said that in that case, they had to defeat the Demon King already. After entering, the Demon King addressed them, saying that they had finally come, and turned to Claude, remarking that he must be the hero. He added that he had heard Claude had been busy slaughtering his subordinates. Claude interrupted and said that he would kill him soon enough as well. Then the Demon King stood up and challenged them, calling them heroes. They fought him together, attacking one after another, and finally defeated him. The Demon King realized that this was the true strength of a hero. Claude then looked at Cross and said that it was finally over. Sophia began teasing Cross, saying that he had done his best and deserved to be showered with praise. But suddenly, the Demon King rose again. At that moment, Cross understood everything. When he was struck from behind, he smiled and thought that he had been meant for that moment. The Demon King crawled, snarling that humans dared to interfere again and that the cycle of hatred would never end. Claude and the others were shocked when they saw Cross. Medel told Claude to move aside so that she could heal him, but she was stunned to discover that the wound carried the Demon King's curse, which interfered so badly that even healing magic would not work. Holding Cross in his lap, Claude heard him ask why he would go so far to protect someone like him. They were all crying as they saw Cross's condition. Cross said that he could not drink, but Medel insisted that he had to. Seeing everyone cry for him, Cross thought that if people were grieving for him like this, then he had truly been lucky. He said that he wished he could have helped everyone more, and then Cross died. Later, a voice called out to Sage Crossfish, saying that due to the late Demon King's curse, Cross Sama had been reincarnated as a monster and would henceforth have to live in the demon realm as a monster. Cross was shocked and confused by all of it. Cross questioned how he had been reincarnated as a monster, wondering where he was and what was even happening. He recalled that they had defeated the Demon King and that he had died afterward. Then he noticed monsters kneeling in Dojeza before him, a sight that left a strong impression on him. Suddenly he became worried about whether Claude and the others were safe. There was no information at all, and the situation felt far too dangerous. At that moment, someone appeared and apologized for speaking out of turn. She introduced herself, saying it was nice to meet him, and that her name was Aura, asking him to call her Aura. Cross was shocked to see a human girl. She then revealed that she was the current Demon King. Hearing that, Cross stood up in shock, but Aura calmed him, telling him not to be alarmed and explaining that she had no intention of harming him, addressing him as Sage Sama. Cross asked who this Sage Sama was supposed to be, thinking she had mistaken him for someone else. She then asked if he was Cross Sama, the rainbow sage of the hero party. Hearing that, he thought to himself how ridiculously cool that title sounded. She continued, calling him the mediator and harmonizer of the hero party, the one who had defeated the Demon King without possessing any special powers. Cross grew frustrated and told her that if she put it that way, he was nothing but dead weight. He said it was just misunderstanding piled on more misunderstanding. More importantly, he asked her to explain the current situation. She explained that the previous Demon King had tried to reincarnate the hero into a monster in order to control him. However, because Cross Sama had protected Claude, the plan had failed, and Cross Sama had been reincarnated instead. It had been a case of mistaken identity. She knelt down and said she was truly and deeply sorry. After hearing her explanation, he asked if he looked cool, which left her confused. He said he felt he had become way cooler than he used to be and wondered if that was considered ugly among monsters. Still confused, she replied that she thought he had a rather handsome face. She then explained that Cross had been reincarnated as a monster and an enemy of humans. Cross remarked that he did not really hold any grudge against monsters. Aura said she was prepared to be killed by Cross Sama, emphasizing how serious the situation was. He asked why he would need to kill her. She replied that it was exactly as expected of Cross Sama. She then mentioned that 10 years had passed since Cross Sama had died. Cross was shocked to hear that it had been 10 years. She explained that reincarnation was not something that happened easily. When he asked how old he was now, she answered that he was 0 years old. Hearing that upset him, and he began worrying about Claude and the others, but Aura told him to eat a meal first. Seeing the meal, he remarked that it must be the cuisine of the monster country. She mentioned that it was his very first meal since being reborn and told him to savor it properly. He felt glad he had been reborn as a monster since everything he had eaten until then had not felt like real cooking. After taking a bite, he wondered why the meat was so tender, what the sauce was made of, and whether he could make it himself. Aura was pleased that it suited his taste. He commented that food from the human world felt a bit rough in comparison. Cross enjoyed the food and said he wanted Claude and the others to taste it too. Aura replied that if he told the maids, they would bring seconds as well. He immediately said he wanted it. He then realized that it was not that monsters had lost to humans, but that the hero had simply defeated the Demon King. Later, he grew excited as he saw the monster city. He remarked that it might be even bigger than the human capital. He was surprised that he was going to live as a monster and asked Aura if he would have to fight humans as well. She replied that there was no need for that. She revealed that she dreamed of building trade relations between monsters and humans, creating a world where the two no longer fought, a world without conflict. Cross was shocked by her words and recalled the future they had once dreamed of, realizing there was still something he could do. He felt genuinely happy hearing her speak and asked to be allowed to help with that wonderful dream. He said there was still a chance for him to stand by everyone's side, and that it was the first time someone had said that to him. He then asked Aura to lend him her strength. Meanwhile, Claude, Medel, Sophia, and Mary visited Crostish's grave, holding flowers in their hands. Claude remarked that it had been a long time since he had stood before Cross's grave. With emotion in his voice, he said that it had been 10 years and 184 days since Cross had left them. Medel apologized, saying she had only been able to visit once every 3 days lately, explaining that she had been very busy. Sophia noted that it had been a while since they had all gathered together like this and wondered whether Cross had been happy. Mary said it reminded her of their journey and mentioned how good Cross's cooking had been. Claude, deeply upset, questioned why Cross had left them behind. He added that there was something they needed to report to him that day. He admitted that Cross probably would not have wanted it, but they could not forgive what had happened, and they had decided to exterminate all the monsters. In the world Cross had protected, there was no place for monsters. Monsters and humans, the fated clash of the former hero party began. Cross asked Aura what he could do to bring about peace. He admitted that he did not know enough about demons and felt that he first needed to understand them. Being called Sage Sama again and again frustrated him so deeply that he found himself unable to properly listen to anything being said. He insisted that there was no way he was a sage. He referred to himself as an idiot and said he could never live up to such expectations. He wondered what a sage even was, feeling overwhelmed by how much he did not understand. Then he asked what his race was. Aura answered that he belonged to the Necronia race, a race that was a mixture of undead and demon. Shocked by this, he asked whether that meant he was dead. She replied that he was not dead, explaining that there were many kinds of undead and that he fell into the category of those revived through magical power. However, she added that Cross-sama was a mixed breed, not immortal, and that he must be careful not to overexert himself. He was unhappy that his advantage had disappeared, but Aura told him not to worry and explained that Necromia were said to possess regenerative abilities. Hearing this, he repeated the words to himself and asked whether he should try testing them. Aura immediately warned him not to push himself, explaining that Necromia were an extremely rare race with very little information available. They were spoken of only in legends, said to have pioneered the demon lands and to have led the world toward peace, and so on. As he listened, Cross grew excited and called it an incredible race, though he immediately felt the weight of expectations pressing down on him again. He remarked that the body had originally been meant for Claude, so he felt that he had to do his best. Aura tried to dismiss the matter, saying they were only stories and telling him not to feel too much pressure. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. A woman entered and introduced herself as Knight Libel. When Aura asked what was wrong to warrant such urgency, the knight replied that there was something she needed to report. She then declared that humans were scum and should not be kept close. It was the first time Cross had heard such direct insults, and they struck even harder coming from a humanoid demon. Aura stated that Cross-san had been a victim of the previous demon lord and deserved to be treated with respect. Knight Libel shouted back that humans deceived and betrayed others, and that Cross could not be trusted. She insisted that he would surely turn his blade against the demon lord. Libel raged that the one who should stand at Aura's side was herself and accused Aura of revealing her true feelings. Aura abruptly cut her off and told her to stop before saying anything further. Cross asked Aura what he should do. Libel glared at him with a look of horror and threatened that he must address Aura as the demon lord or she would kill him. Cross wondered whether that was really something a knight should say. Aura apologized for her knight, but Cross brushed it aside, saying that loyalty to one's master was a good thing. Aura then said she had a good idea and explained that this was the perfect opportunity for him to prove to the citizens that he was trustworthy. Knight Libel pointed at Cross and challenged him to a duel, demanding that he win and prove himself while mocking him as a fake Sage Sama. Aura grew angry and asked what Libel thought she was saying, insisting that there was no way she would allow such a thing. However, Cross immediately accepted the duel. Aura told him not to do it and warned him not to make such a reckless promise. He smiled and said that if he was not properly recognized in the demon realm, he would never be able to help fulfill Aura's dream. Later, in the fighting stadium, people chatted excitedly. Some said they were betting everything on the Sage. Seeing this, Aura realized just how impressive the Sage's reputation was and wondered if she had caused Cross-sama unnecessary trouble. A woman asked Aura whether this was truly all right. She pointed out that in the human world, some had labeled Cross-sama as the hero party's dead weight. Facing him was the traitorous Knight Libel, a warrior whose strength rivaled the generals of the previous demon lord's army and who was said to be the strongest in history. She believed there was no chance of victory, and that all they could do now was watch. Seeing the massive crowd gathered around him, Cross began to think that perhaps he had acted too cool. He had not expected the situation to grow into such a large event, and there were far too many spectators. As he stepped onto the battlefield, Libel mocked him for his pitiful expression and asked whether he was getting cold feet. She added that this duel was also a matter of the demon lord's dignity. Then the match began. Libel immediately launched her attack. Cross realized how fast she was and understood that he needed to put some distance between them. As he moved away, Libel mocked him, questioning whether someone who called himself a sage was really going to run. She then attacked him with magic. Cross was shocked, realizing that it was not just her swordsmanship. She could use magic as well. She continued her assault with spells, taunting him to keep running and declaring that there was no hero there to protect him or fight on his behalf. A woman standing beside Aura remarked that perhaps they should have stopped the fight. Aura replied that Cross had always been concerned with how others viewed him and must have honed his abilities in such an environment. She said that with eyes capable of discerning any movement, Cross had witnessed the world's greatest battles. She added that the demon lord had never been merciful enough to lose while carrying dead weight, and that Cross had been a genuine member of the hero party. Watching the battlefield, Aura grew worried. People in the crowd commented that the destructive power on display was terrifying and said that if it continued like this, the fight would end one-sidedly. Some even wondered whether the sage was actually poor at combat after all. Libel remarked that it looked like the match would end with magic alone and called it a boring fight. At that moment, Cross suddenly threw a stone at her. She initially thought it was a counterattack, but quickly realized that he was simply throwing stones. She mocked him, calling it pathetic and saying that all he could do was hide and wait things out. However, he kept throwing more stones. She said that even if they hit, they would not leave a scratch, and questioned whether he was merely buying time and what the point of it was. Then Cross emerged from the explosions and advanced toward Libel. She realized that he had used her blasts as cover, called him a clever little pest, and declared that even if he got close, it would become his grave. She slashed his hand with her sword. Aura was shocked, and Libel smiled in satisfaction. But then Cross counterattacked. He stated that Libel had underestimated him and knocked her blade aside. Using his other hand, he struck her sword upward with his own and pressed his blade straight against her neck. Libel froze in shock as the crowd erupted into loud chatter. Libel flew into a rage and insisted that just because her sword had been taken, the fight was not over, preparing to use magic. Aura interrupted and declared that it was enough, announcing that the match was decided and that victory belonged to the Rainbow Sage, Cross Sama. Libel protested, addressing Aura as Demon Lord Sama and arguing that she could still defeat Cross. Cross felt a sense of relief, realizing that his strategy had worked. Meanwhile, Libel continued to protest, demanding that the guards release her and insisting that she had not lost. Cross noticed the crowd cheering and calling out Sage Sama. Some said it was amazing, others said they had believed he would win, and some remarked that it was exactly what one would expect from a member of the hero party. Feeling happy, Cross smiled and thought to himself that his previous life had not been wasted after all. Later, Aura asked Cross Sama whether he was all right, reminding him that she had told him not to overdo it. Cross laughed and said that it would regenerate anyway. Aura replied that she did not know whether lost limbs could heal completely. When Cross asked what they should do next, Aura was still upset. But at that moment, his hand began to grow back. Aura called it amazing, though she noted that it was still somewhat small. She remarked that his regenerative ability was incredible, and that she had never seen anything like it. Suddenly, Libel appeared and demanded to know why she had lost, insisting that she was stronger than Cross. Aura replied that Libel was simply being a sore loser and asked whether she had not, in fact, lost. Cross then interrupted, saying that what Libel claimed was partly true. He explained that the outcome had come from the carelessness of the strong and that he had merely taken advantage of an opening. Libel shouted angrily that she had shown no such carelessness. Cross laughed and replied that everyone had moments like that, even Claude, though he had never been able to defeat him. He admitted that he had only won by sacrificing his left hand and acknowledged that Libel was indeed strong. He then asked Libel whether she would trust him. She replied angrily that if it was only in terms of combat, she could acknowledge him to some extent, though not completely. Cross then said that he wanted to help with Aura's work. Aura responded that he did not need to do that, but Cross reminded her that he had already said he would help with her dream. Hearing this, Libel remarked that it was an incredibly strange yet admirable attitude. Libel asked Demon Lord Sama whether it was truly all right to entrust the matter to Cross. Aura replied that it was too dangerous and that she did not believe he was suited for it. However, she also admitted that it was true there was no one else they could rely on. Then, as Demon Lord Aura Feel, she made a formal request to Cross Sama. There were those who opposed her policy of coexistence with humans. The remnants of the former Demon Lord's army had gathered around a new core, forming a force capable of attempting a coup at any moment. She asked Cross to suppress them. Cross questioned whether subjugating them was acceptable. Aura replied that it could not be avoided and requested that he take Libel with him. Libel shouted, demanding to know why she had to accompany Cross, but in the end she agreed and went with him. Together, Libel and Cross arrived at a location that was clearly the enemy's hideout. The Demon Lord's castleware was impressive, as it remained warm even after a long time had passed. Cross thought that if he had possessed something like this back when he was traveling with everyone, it would have been useful. Libel questioned why he was relaxing in a place like that when the enemy base was just around the corner. She snapped that he was getting soft and reminded him that he was the one who had defeated her and had been entrusted with the Demon Lord's will. Cross replied that it was not like that at all and pointed out that she could not fight on an empty stomach. Libel glanced at the food and remarked that it was a meager meal. However, after tasting it, she admitted that it was delicious and asked for more. Seeing her reaction, Cross commented that it was quite a quick change of heart and added that he was simply glad she liked it. Libel suggested that Cross should become a royal chef for the Demon Lord, saying that serving the Demon Lord would clearly be for his own benefit. Cross then left, saying that he would check on the hideout again. While observing the hideout, he mentioned that he wanted a bit more intel. They had been ordered to defeat the enemy, but if possible, he wanted to avoid fighting. At that moment, he noticed someone coming out, and that person looked straight at him through binoculars. Cross was shocked that he had been spotted from such a distance. He rushed back to Libel and told her that they needed to pull back. Suddenly, a man appeared right behind Cross and muttered that he must be one of Aura's lackeys. Cross was stunned and frightened by how quickly the man had appeared. He recalled Aura's warning that while the group likely did not have many members, there was one individual they had to be especially cautious of, the leader. The figure was a half-human, half-horse being named Gustar, said to be faster than the wind. Gustar remarked that it was an honor to be visited by the famous sage everyone had been talking about. They had effectively been invited into enemy territory, and if they were not careful, every monster could attack them at once. Cross wondered what he should do. Libel reached for her sword, but Cross stopped her and told her to hold back. She demanded to know why he was stopping her, saying they had come to defeat their enemies, and questioned whether he was planning to disobey the Demon Lord's orders. Cross replied that it was not like that at all. He explained that achieving peace between humans and monsters was not simple, and that if monsters continued fighting among themselves, it would remain nothing more than a pipe dream. He let out a light laugh and said they should settle this peacefully and move Aura's dream one step forward. Cross then asked Gustar why he was opposing Aura. Gustar answered that he wanted to run freely across the continent, and to do so, he intended to wipe out humanity. Cross said that wiping out humans was not necessary for him to run freely. Gustar laughed and questioned whether Cross truly believed that was possible. He explained that the biological power gap between monsters and humans was far too great, and that humans would never accept such an imbalance. In the name of equality, they would eventually regulate monster power. That outcome was the complete opposite of what he wanted, and humans had always betrayed them. Cross pointed out that Gustar was supposed to be on his side. Gustar laughed and replied that if Cross wanted him to obey, he should bring someone faster than him, adding that if such a person even existed, it would be himself. Cross proposed a race, saying that if he won, Gustar would listen to him. He believed it might be the opening they needed. Hearing this, Gustar wore a creepy smile and said it sounded fun, declaring that the race was on. Cross wondered whether it would really be that easy. Libel asked what was going on, commenting that it felt like a festival, with fireworks even going off. Cross looked around and wondered why monsters always made everything so dramatic. Soon, the race was about to begin. Gustar explained that the rules were simple. They had to touch the tree at the top of the hill, and whoever reached it first would be the winner. He then asked Cross if he was ready. The race started, and Gustar immediately surged ahead. Libel asked whether Cross had already fallen behind, while the surrounding monsters began chattering, convinced that their boss had already won. Suddenly, Cross threw a rope, wrapped it around Gustar, and clung to it, dangling behind him as he was dragged forward. Libel shouted that it was cheating. Gustar demanded to know what Cross thought he was doing and ordered him to let go. Cross replied that it did not violate the rules. Gustar warned that he would die if he kept doing something like that. Cross answered that he was trying to change the world, so this was nothing, adding that he had already died once anyway. Gustar said that many of his comrades have been killed by humans and questioned why they had to endure everything for the sake of people like that. He added that even though Cross had reincarnated, he was still human, and therefore would naturally only care about humans. Clutching the rope tightly, Cross replied that it was not true. He said that countless monsters and humans alike had died, and that he himself had been trapped in that same cycle. He insisted that things could not continue this way. His body covered in wounds, Cross shouted that everyone would be happy together, hand in hand. Gustar grew furious and said Cross was dreaming far too big, trying to defeat him with such a dirty trick. Cross replied that he had known from the very beginning that he could not win the race alone. Then Cross pulled out a firework he had bought earlier from his pocket. He scraped it against the ground, and the explosion launched him upward, sending him flying ahead of Gustar. Gustar was stunned by the sight of the firework. Cross landed directly at the destination, reached the tree at the top of the hill, and shouted to Gustar, asking him to be his friend. He then asked whether that counted as a win. Gustar called him an idiot and questioned who in their right mind would jump off an exploding firework. Cross smiled and replied that he had exceptional regenerative abilities. Gustar laughed and said that even so, no one would normally do something like that. He then remarked that Cross had promised to show him an extraordinary view, said that he liked that idea and decided to follow him. Gustar agreed to join his side and addressed him as the mighty Rainbow Sage. Cross told him to simply call him Cross. As a monster, Cross continued to gain allies. An old man finished presenting the accounting report to the king. After declaring the end of the term, he stated that he would take his leave. Claude whispered to himself, calling Cross humanity's savior, humanity's guardian, and the king of kings. He questioned what he himself was doing and why he continued to protect humans. He thought that humanity itself should be destroyed as well. Suddenly, Claude caught a knife that had been thrown toward him by Mary. She demanded to know why he was saying such stupid things. Claude commented that it was unusual for her to be there. Mary replied that Cross had been enduring those thoughts for a long time. She said that there was no way they could destroy the world that Cross had risked his life to protect. Claude said he knew that, then apologized and admitted that he was simply tired. Mary then asked what had worn him out so much, joking that she could comfort him with her body. Claude replied that he did not need jokes like that and that she did not truly mean it. He added that she had no intention of being touched by anyone other than Cross. She then told him they should get to the point. Mary said that she had gone to meet Cross's parents. Claude suddenly shouted that they had promised not to visit them and warned that getting close would definitely cause trouble. Mary asked him to listen to her first. She explained that Cross's parents had said Cross considered them his true friends from the bottom of his heart. They said that Cross always wrote about Claude in his letters, not as a hero, but simply as Claude. He wrote about the stupid things they had done together, how they laughed, and how they enjoyed themselves. Hearing this, Claude felt greatly relieved. Mary then mentioned one important thing, saying that it seemed Medel and Sophia had departed for monster territory the other day. Upon hearing that, Claude stood up and said they had beaten them to it. Mary asked if she should come along with him. Claude replied that without Cross, there was no reason for them to be together, and that they had only met by chance at his grave. He then declared that he would go and destroy the monsters. Meanwhile, Cross celebrated with Gustar, while Libel grew angry and demanded to know what Cross was doing, reminding him that they were still on a mission. Gustar lifted her up and told her not to be so stiff, saying she was supposed to feast after a battle. Libel snapped back, telling him to shut up and calling him horseface. Gustar angrily replied that only his body was horse-like. Libel shot back that his face was horse-like too, and that it was disgusting. At that moment, Cross stepped in and told them to cut it out. He said that he had prepared a meal and that they should eat. Gustar asked why he was cooking when he was the main attraction. Cross replied that he had been interested in monster cuisine, so he had asked them to teach him. Suddenly, some monsters appeared and said they could not accept the outcome. Gustar angrily told them that it was the result of the contest and warned them not to say such uncouth things. They argued that cheating did not count and that taking advantage of the boss's manliness was unacceptable. Cross began thinking about what they should do next. Then Gustar told Cross that he had a good idea. Without warning, he lifted Cross onto his back and declared the start of the explosive Gustar rodeo. The monsters erupted into chatter, calling it amazing and saying he was breaking endurance records. Watching all of this, Libel wondered if everyone there was an idiot and decided that she wanted to return to Orasama as soon as possible. Cross somehow managed to endure it. He said he wanted to praise himself for not throwing up. Gustar remarked that he really did have guts. Suddenly, Cross collapsed and apologized, admitting that he had gotten carried away. Watching the scene, Libel commented that it truly was a gathering of fools. She then called him an idiot and asked if he was still going to be so pathetic, referring to him as a pitiful man. Seeing her like that, Cross asked whether she was drunk. She denied it, then suddenly grabbed him and said that there clearly had not been enough liquor. She told him to drink more, declaring that she herself was completely drunk. After that, Gustar, Libel, and Cross all enjoyed themselves together. Gustar mentioned that there were several other remnant armies nearby, and that if he acted as a mediator, they should at least be able to talk. Cross replied that if they went to meet them directly, they could come to understand one another and continue increasing their allies. A world without conflict was no longer just a dream. Gustar answered that he did not think it would go that smoothly. He explained that there was one particularly troublesome individual known as Fire Dragon Drake. Drake was overwhelmingly strong among the remnants, and likely viewed humans as nothing more than food. Libel said that she had heard of him as well and commented that Orasama should have been more wary of him. Cross replied that with Gustar's connections and Libel's strength, things would surely work out. Libel immediately shot back that Cross should do something too. He answered that if they could unite the monsters' opinions, Claude and Aura would at least be able to hold a discussion. Libel shouted that there was no way that Hero would listen. Cross replied that if they talked, Claude would understand. He said that Claude had always been a really good guy. Speaking of Claude, Gustar mentioned that he had heard the hero had disappeared from the kingdom. When Cross asked what he meant, an injured monster suddenly appeared, seeking help from Gustar-san. Gustar recognized him as someone from Drake's territory. The monster reported that the hero was attacking. Claude defeated the dragon and dedicated the victory to Cross Kun. The scene shifted to the past, and Claude recalled his old memories with Cross. Back then, Cross had complained that eating the same food every day was boring and had suggested that once they reached the next town, they should go eat something truly luxurious. Claude had replied that Cross's cooking was already the greatest luxury to him. Hearing that, Cross had hugged him and said that Claude always said such nice things. The scene then shifted back to the present. Claude spoke quietly to himself, saying that he wanted to eat Cross's cooking again, because everything except what Cross made tasted like nothing. At that moment, Gustar, Libel, and Cross arrived at the place where Claude was resting. Cross was shocked when he saw Claude there. Seeing them, Claude asked whether they were monsters and drew his sword, saying that it did not really matter either way. Cross immediately shouted for him to wait and told him that he was Cross. He said that there was no longer any need to fight monsters, and that unlike the previous demon lord, Aura did not seek conflict. Before anything else could be said, Claude suddenly cut off Cross's hand. Libel, Gustar, and Cross were all stunned by what had just happened. Claude then shouted, asking how he dared speak of Cross, calling him nothing more than a monster, and he continued attacking him without hesitation. Cross told him that he had been reincarnated and explained that it was the demon lord's curse that had turned him into a monster. He said that inside he was still the same as when he had been human, and that he still carried all of his memories with everyone. However, Claude continued attacking and said that Cross did not have such a stupid face. He said that Cross had rounder, more adorable eyes and straight hair, and that those were the things that truly symbolized Cross. Cross asked if he did not look better now. He then reminded Claude that it had been Claude who invited him to join the party. He said he clearly remembered how, in the port town, Mary had taught him how to swim, and how in the desert, Sophia and Medel had given him water. He reminded Claude that Claude had eaten his cooking and said it was delicious, and that everyone had always told him that anything was fine, which had actually been quite troublesome. He also reminded him of their promise to drink together until morning. Even so, Claude kicked him in the stomach and accused him of being a monster who read people's memories, asking how much more he intended to disgust him. He said that if reincarnation were truly possible, he would have tried it long ago. Suddenly, Libel attacked Claude with her magic. She called him a hero and said this was nothing but an obstacle to Aura-sama's dream. She continued her assault, declaring that he had killed the demon lord, and that no one would complain if she killed him as well. In a single motion, Claude slammed Libel to the ground. At that moment, Cross rushed forward, shoved Claude back, and shouted for Gustar. Gustar grabbed Libel and fled from the scene. Claude then slammed Cross to the ground once more. Cross began crawling toward him and called out Claude's name, but Claude told him to stop. Suddenly, a memory of Cross surfaced in Claude's mind. He questioned what Cross really was and why his presence made him so angry, saying that his chest felt unsettled. Then he said that it was enough. He had lost the will to kill. Turning away, he warned Cross never to appear before him again and declared that he would destroy all monsters without fail. Later, the dragon thanked Cross for rescuing him, calling him sage, as they rested together in a pond with Gustar. Gustar remarked that it was just as expected of a dragon's vitality, considering that he had nearly died. Meanwhile, Cross remained deeply troubled by the fact that Claude had not recognized him. Gustar tried to snap him out of it, asking how long he planned to keep moping around and calling it pathetic. He pointed out that even Drake had become their ally. The dragon then assured the sage that if he encountered that hero again, he would pay him back. Gustar added that it was not just about that, explaining to the dragon that Cross wanted to create a world where they would not have to fight humans at all. Hearing this, the dragon immediately said that it was impossible. He stated that his comrades had also been killed and that he could not do something so cowardly. Gustar remarked that this was exactly why he had said it would be difficult. He added that persuading humans would likely be just as hard as persuading monsters. He then asked Cross whether they should give up after all, or if it was simply too much for him. Cross replied that he would not give up. He declared that they had only crossed paths once, and that he would convince Claude himself, because only he could do it. When they returned, Aura felt relieved upon seeing that both Libel and Cross were safe. She said that she had already received the report and remarked that she had never expected Cross to return with the remnant forces as allies. Gustar told her not to misunderstand, explaining that he was not following the demon lord, but Cross instead. Aura replied that such loyalty after only a single meeting was impressive and admitted that she felt a little envious. She also praised Libel, saying that she had done a good job. Libel responded that she had merely lost and mocked herself, noting that it had happened twice in a row. Cross then told Aura that Claude had said he would exterminate the monsters. He asked whether they were going to war with humans once again. Aura replied that she should explain the current state of relations between monsters and humans. She said that economically they were fairly stable and maintained good relations with maritime merchant nations. However, she added that the areas near the hero's kingdom and the former demon lord's castle remained strongly anti-monster. Hearing that, Cross was shocked and asked whether those nations had attacked them. Aura replied that there had been none with real intensity. She explained that shortly after his group had encountered the hero Claude, the other party members had been sighted across the country. She added that in war they would normally move together, and this time it felt personal. Cross wondered why they would all act that way. Aura replied that they were likely seeking revenge for Cross. Cross said that he had thought he was protecting everyone and wondered if he had ended up hurting them even more instead. Frustration built within him, and he said that he needed to tell them that he was still alive. Aura remarked that 8 years of peace had made them complacent, and that they needed to unite the monsters quickly. Gustar added that with the remnant forces and the opposition, it would not be easy. Cross shouted that he would make everyone allies, but Aura told him not to overdo it. He then looked at Libel and said that she had saved him back then, and that if she had not arrived, he would have been killed by Claude. From behind them, Gustar whispered that they should not let the mummy become the mummifier. He added that it was his first time in the capital in ages and said that he would scout ahead. Watching them, Aura wondered what kind of terrible coordination they had. Later, Aura announced that they had arrived at the treasury. She said that their liege was waiting and asked her maid to guide them through the Mercurius treasury. When Cross saw her, he was shocked and asked whether she was Aura's maid. The maid replied that she had watched his recent match and mentioned that he had even subdued that brat Dre. She remarked that the weak confronting and crushing the strong was admirable, unlike Libel, whose habit of underestimating her opponents and losing was pathetic. She then scolded Libel for it. When the maid asked Libel when she would finally grow up, Cross asked her to go easy on Libel. Aura then announced that they would enter the treasury. Seeing it, Cross was shocked and said that it was amazing, both in quality and quantity. Aura mentioned that it was their greatest treasury. The maid spoke loudly, declaring that it was magnificent and filled with dazzling brilliance. She said that each piece seemed to proclaim itself the most valuable. Aura awkwardly remarked that her maid was obsessed with treasures, and Cross thought that she might not be the best guide. Aura replied that despite that, her maid knew the place better than anyone. Aura then asked Cross what kind of weapons he could use. He answered that Mary had taught him various styles, so he could handle almost any weapon. If he had to choose, he said it would probably be a sword, and maybe a dagger as well. He added that he did not want anything too flashy, and that something like Claude's sword would be nice. He then pointed out a specific sword and asked about it. Aura replied that it was mass-produced and not recommended. Hearing that, he was shocked and said it made no sense, because it had been Claude's sword. Aura shouted angrily that that was exactly what frightened her, explaining that the hero who had defeated the former demon lord had wielded it. Upon hearing that, he understood. After that, his gaze fixed on a unique sword. As he continued staring at it, the maid spoke from behind, calling it ataraxy, and remarked that it was just as expected of the sage to notice such an interesting artifact. However, she said it was hardly a good sword, describing it as a living blade that grew alongside its wielder and even changed form to suit its owner. She added that weapons were meant to strengthen their users, and that this one was defective. She noted that it was quite rare nonetheless. Even so, he said that he would take that sword, which prompted the maid to ask whether he had even been listening. He then lifted the sword, and said that with it, he could grow stronger as well. Aura remarked that it suited him well and expressed her hope that the two would become good partners. The scene then shifted to the past, as Cross remembered the moment Claude had handed him his sword, saying that he had used it since childhood. Cross had replied that he could not accept something so precious. Mary had said that Claude already had plenty of advantages. Sophia had said she would give him her robe, Mary had offered her dagger, and Medel had offered her body. Cross had thanked them all. The scene shifted back to the present. Cross said that he had been too dependent and that he needed to be understood. He said that he would grow stronger for everyone. He then announced that he would go find Claude immediately. However, Aura asked him to wait a few days first and explained that she had a request. She said that she wanted him to attend their educational institution. She apologized for the suddenness and added that it was a citizen's duty. Cross smiled and told her not to worry, saying that he was a monster now as well. He said that he was excited to hear about the school, mentioning that he had never been able to attend one as a human and that he was looking forward to it. Aura then revealed that it was a kindergarten. Sitting in a kindergarten classroom surrounded by children, he never imagined that he would end up becoming a kindergarten student. After noticing Gustar, Libel, and Aura watching, he shouted and asked why everyone was there. Gustar laughed and said that they could not miss something that interesting. Aura smiled as well and said that she had simply been worried about Cross-sama. Cross decided to change his mindset. He said that it was a chance to learn about demons and that he needed to be a good example for the children. The teacher began the lesson and explained that they would be learning about different races. After finishing the explanation, she asked whether everyone understood. The children shouted that they did, while Cross had not understood anything at all. He heard the children saying that it was easy. Soon after, the teacher announced that everyone could go outside to play. Sitting alone, Cross spoke to himself and thought that being a kindergarten student was not easy either. At that moment, a young girl approached him and said that he was very cool and that she wanted to become his bride. Cross laughed and thanked her. He gently patted her head and told her that if her feelings did not change when she grew up, then he would be the one to ask her at that time. Hearing that made her very happy. Aura noticed that Cross-sama seemed used to interacting with children. Cross replied that his party had often gone to the orphanage together in the past. He remembered the times when they had played with the children. Aura said that they had to protect those children. Cross agreed and then said that he would go play with them as well. He asked the children what they were playing and whether he could join. The children replied that they were playing Sage. He saw them arguing over who would be the Sage. Watching them, he asked whether he was supposed to be the enemy, but the children replied that Cross-kun would be the hero. Cross then joined the game and told all the children that they were going to defeat the bad guys together. He pointed toward Libel and told them to look, saying that there was an evil knight over there. All the children ran toward Libel, and she protested that she would not do something like that. The children surrounded her and said that they would defeat her. Eventually she joined in, shouting back at them and saying that they thought they could defeat her with just that, before pretending to roar at them. Suddenly, Gustar appeared and declared that he, the demon lord, was their opponent. The children immediately rushed toward him to play. Gustar pretended to be defeated, which made the children happy, and then fell to the ground and dramatically declared that the demon lord would not lose. Then one of the monster children said that the demon lord had to be strong and lead with strength, and that was why Aura-sama was not suitable as demon lord. Libel became angry, but Cross stopped her and said that reacting like that was not mature. A young girl shouted that he should not say such things about the demon lord. The boy replied that he had heard from his father that humans were attacking, and that it was because the current demon lord was weak that they were being looked down upon. He said that monsters were stronger than humans and that they should attack first, just as the previous demon lord had done. At that moment, the teacher arrived and announced that it was lunchtime. She told the children to wash their hands and return to the classroom. While eating, Cross began to think that there were probably many monsters who felt the same way as that child. The previous demon lord had been militaristic, so that way of thinking was likely influencing them. He also thought that saying a strong king was better was not entirely wrong either, since there were great nations where the king led the army. He wondered what they should tell the children. Then the teacher announced that for the noon lesson, a special teacher would be coming. Aura appeared and asked everyone to listen to her story for a moment. Seeing Aura take on the role of the teacher left Cross shocked. Aura said that she dreamed of creating a world where monsters and humans did not have to fight. She then asked the children whether they had dreams of their own. Some said they wanted to become bakers, some said splendid knights, one said Cross-kun's bride, and another said Abiel. Aura remarked that all of those were wonderful dreams. She added that if war were to begin, they would no longer be able to pursue those dreams, and many would be forced onto the battlefield. She said that she wanted a world where everyone could chase their dreams for themselves, for their children, and for their grandchildren. She added that she also wanted them to know about the wider world, because the demon territory alone was not nearly enough. She told them that when their world expanded, their dreams would expand as well. One child shouted that it was impossible and said that even the previous demon lord could not do it. Aura replied that it certainly would not be easy, but that she had allies. She said that she would prepare the environment. She said that she had the sage, and that she had all of the children, and asked them to learn many things. She then asked them what they thought, and whether they believed it could be achieved. The children began shouting that they would help the demon lord. Aura admitted that while it was true she lacked power compared to previous demon lords, she was greedier than any of them. In a whisper, Aura said that it had been nothing but pretty words, and that she was nothing more than a fraud. Cross replied that it was not true and said that it had been a good speech. Aura said that she had shown him something pathetic. He answered that it was not pathetic at all, and that it was Aura's strength. He remarked that as a ruler she could not show weakness to those around her, and asked her not to hide it from him at least. Aura replied that she could not trouble him like that. He suggested that they should be friends instead. Aura answered that she could not be like the kindergarten students, adding that she was actually older than him. Cross wondered to himself whether he had been a bother. Meanwhile, Medel practiced her magic for Cross. She wanted to see him soon and was certain that she would bring him back to life. Aura was about to begin teaching about the future policy of Team Beautiful. Hearing the name, Cross reacted in embarrassment and asked what kind of name that was. Gustar commented that it sounded like a beautiful yet foolish person, while Libel explained that it meant beauty and fools. Aura continued, saying that the basic policy remained the same as before. They would bring those in the opposition over to their side. She explained that the opposition would likely gain momentum due to the hero's attacks, which made inspecting the areas around the attack lands especially urgent. She added that another critical task was dealing with the hero party, stating that they had to be stopped before the damage became catastrophic. Aura then asked Cross whether he could handle the persuasion. Cross replied immediately that she could leave it to him, saying it was something only he could do. Gustar expressed doubt, remarking that judging from Claude's behavior, he did not think they would listen. He asked whether everyone in the hero party was like that. Cross replied that they pretty much were. Aura smiled and commented on what kind of group that was. Libel asked whether there was not anyone with a better attitude. Cross mentioned Medel by name. Aura then stated that their policy had been decided. Cross added that in order to find the witch Medel, they should go to the village she had attacked. As they traveled, Aura said that traveling was a lot of fun. Cross asked why she had come along as well. She replied that after making such a bold declaration in front of the children, she could not simply sit and wait in the royal castle. When Cross asked about her duties as Demon Lord, she told him not to worry, saying that she had left them in good hands with her future self. He asked whether that was not simply procrastination. Gustar asked whether Cross could really do something about it. Libel stated that they could not afford any more failures and that the mission had to be carried out perfectly. Looking at Libel, Cross thought that she had improved since kindergarten. Aura told Libel that she was entrusting her with the role of escort on the journey and said that she was counting on her. Hearing that Aura was relying on her, Libel became very happy and said to leave everything to her, addressing Aura-sama. Her confidence surged, and she declared that whether it was heroes or witches, she was ready for them. Gustar remarked that they were probably being called idiots by that thing. Libel then shouted at Gustar, calling him a horse and telling him to let Aura-sama ride him. He immediately refused, saying there was no way, and reminded her that he had not joined under the Demon Lord. He then looked at Cross and said that he would not mind if it was him instead. Cross declined and said that he would pass. After some time, Aura said that they should be able to see their destination soon. Suddenly, a group of monsters appeared in their path and ordered them to move aside, threatening to kill them if they did not. Cross recognized them as bandits and asked Aura whether it was all right to engage. She replied that she did not mind. Cross then drew his sword, called it his partner, and said that it would be its first battle. Libel and Gustar defeated the monsters in no time. Cross was shocked and remarked that he had not even moved yet. Aura praised them, saying good work to everyone and expressing relief that they were all safe. Suddenly, one of the monsters fired an arrow toward Aura. Cross stepped in front of her, and the arrow pierced his hand. Aura asked anxiously whether he was all right. He replied that it was nothing. One of the monsters told the Demon Lord that if she was going to kill him, she might as well do it. Watching them, something began to bother Aura. She asked why they had been in such a hurry. Gustar told Cross that those individuals were not ordinary bandits, but remnant soldiers. One of the monsters muttered that just when he thought they would get away, they should not have fought her in the first place. Hearing those words, Cross realized that he was referring to the witch. He immediately started running and urged everyone to hurry. Medel was surrounded by monsters. She muttered that she did not understand what their problem was, saying that she only wanted to hurry back and continue her research. The monsters shouted that she was too strong, and that even though the enemy was only one person, they should attack all at once. They yelled that they were avenging the Demon King. Hearing the word avenge, Medel said that it was supposed to be her line. She added that it was becoming annoying and declared that she would kill them all at once. At that moment, Cross suddenly appeared in front of her. Medel used her magic to defeat all the monsters except Cross. She said that she had wanted to see him for a very long time. She said that she was glad he was alive because she loved him, and that she knew deep in her soul that it was truly Cross. She repeated that Cross was alive. Hearing that, Cross was shocked and asked how she knew it was truly him. She answered that it was because he clearly looked like Cross, and there was no way she could mistake him for anyone else. She added that it was strange he was even surprised by that. Cross replied that it was because Claude had failed to recognize him. She responded that this only meant Claude's love had gone that far. Cross questioned whether that was not a bit too harsh toward Claude. She then said that it was true he had changed a little. When he emphasized the word little, he pointed out that he had become a demon. After that, she asked how he had come back to life, wondering whether it had been through reincarnation or a transfer of the soul. At that moment, Aura, Libel, and Gustar arrived. Aura was relieved to see that Cross was safe and told him not to rush off on his own like that. Cross apologized, saying that his body had moved on its own. He then introduced Aura to Medel. Medel immediately used her magic to attack Aura, but Libel blocked the strike and protected her. Medel demanded to know why a demon was standing beside Cross, and why it was a woman. She began shouting for them to give Cross back, declaring that Cross belonged to her, and that she had waited for 10 whole years. She continued attacking with her magic, saying she would never let anyone take anything from her again. Medel muttered to herself that Libel's interference had caused her magic to go out of control. She noted that Libel was different from the common rabble, and that she seemed strong enough to bewitch Cross. Aura shouted to Medel that this was a misunderstanding. She explained that they were not her enemies, but Cross's companions. Hearing that, Medel said that Cross had always been looked down upon. He had been insulted for things that were not true and scorned by the ignorant masses. Even so, Cross had endured everything with a smile, all for their sake. Medel questioned whether they were not taking advantage of Cross. Aura replied that they would never take advantage of him. Medel insisted that Cross belonged with her, but Aura asked her to listen to what they were saying. At that moment, Gustar interrupted and said that Cross was no longer there. Cross had been taken by a monster. He struggled to free himself, but the monster warned him not to resist, saying that it would only end in failure. The monster explained that they had been ordered to bring him back alive. Cross thought to himself that he could not believe he had been kidnapped. He realized that he had been focusing too much on Medel, and the situation felt embarrassing to him. The monster caped Cross and told him to walk properly. Cross thought about Medel and the others who were still fighting and wondered whether it would be bad if he did not return quickly. He realized that the one escorting him was a remnant soldier, and if it was only that one, he wondered whether he could defeat him and escape. The monster reported to his boss that they had brought him. Cross was shocked when he saw the giant monster waiting there. The creature asked whether he was the Rainbow Sage. Cross thought to himself that this was bad and realized that he could not defeat someone like that. He asked why he had been captured. The monster replied that it was obvious that he was a hostage. Cross then asked what they intended to demand using him. The monster answered that they wanted the head of Demon King Aurafil. Cross shouted that there was no way such a demand would ever work. The monster replied that if Cross thought that way, he had heard that Cross was quite favored. Cross muttered to himself that it was absurd and wondered whether the monster had any intention of speaking seriously. He then asked how the monster had known that they would come there. The monster replied that it was the land closest to the royal capital among those that had been attacked by humans, so the probability of a sage being dispatched there had not been low. He added that some had begun claiming they wanted to avenge the previous Demon King, but in the end, they had merely served as bait and had been wiped out. Cross then asked why the monster was hostile toward Aura. The monster responded that Cross had done nothing but ask questions and demanded to know whether he even understood his own position. Cross said that this would be his last question. The monster answered that he would no longer be able to kill humans and that it was troublesome since his hobby had been banned. Hearing that, Cross was shocked and said it was nothing but selfishness. The monster replied that since Aura did not possess the power to fight herself, she was probably trying to create a playing field that favored her instead. Cross told the monster that he was wrong and warned him not to compare Aura to someone like him. He said that the monster was nothing more than a bandit. In response, the monster ordered his soldiers to keep Cross locked up. One of the soldiers ordered Cross to stay quiet. Cross wondered why he had gone and antagonized the enemy in the first place. He then resolved to escape, feeling grateful that Mary had taught him escape techniques. Noticing that there were no guards, he began running, muttering to himself that he remembered the path and needed to reunite with everyone as quickly as possible. Suddenly, a monster's arm burst through the wall and struck directly toward Cross. The monster snarled that locking Cross in the cell had been an act of mercy. It asked whether, now that he had escaped, he was prepared to fight. At that moment, Medel arrived at the location where Cross had been held, accompanied by Gustar, Aura, and Libel. All of them were filled with rage, prepared to kill every monster in sight. Medel immediately began attacking the area. The monsters started shouting that there was an intruder and ordered everyone to restrain her at once. Seeing the look of horror on Medel's face, one monster cried out that there was no way anyone could possibly stop that monster. Gustar noticed that Medel was taking down every enemy by herself. Aura commented that Medel was extremely reassuring to have as an ally. Hearing Aura call her an ally, Medel scoffed and said that was ridiculous. She stated that she was only keeping Aura alive because she claimed to know where Cross was. She added that once Cross was rescued, Aura and the others would be next, and she ordered everyone to focus solely on rescuing Cross. Libel told Aura that moving together with Medel was inefficient and suggested that they search a different area instead. Aura agreed immediately. Gustar teased Libel, remarking that she seemed unusually motivated. Libel replied that it was a mission given by Lady Aura, so of course she was. She added that she could not leave a debt unpaid, referring to the time Cross had saved Aura from an arrow. Hearing that, Aura said that it was very much like Libel. Aura then explained that the remnant soldiers in that area were somewhat unusual. She had heard that they were a group of criminals who had repeatedly committed crimes. Since Cross had been captured as a hostage, they likely would not kill him. The moment Gustar heard that, he suddenly started running with Aura on his back, shouting that this was an exception. Libel yelled at him to slow down and be careful. Gustar snapped back, telling her not to be stupid, because he could not compromise when it came to running. They soon reached an area swarming with monsters and realized that there were many enemies present. Libel told Lady Aura to stay back and leave everything to her. Libel wiped out all the monsters with a massive magical explosion. She remarked that even though they had turned to crime, this was all they amounted to, and that none of them had any real backbone. She smiled eerily and declared that she was the one who protected Lady Aura. Without warning, a wolf-like monster appeared and slammed Libel straight into the ground. Aura and Gustar were stunned by what they saw. Then another monster appeared in front of them and said that, just as reported, the Demon King was really there, making the kidnapping of the sage pointless. He added that since the boss was having fun, he would join in as well. Gustar defeated that monster with a single punch. However, he immediately felt a strange sensation in his hand and wondered whether it was a wound or a burn. The monster explained that if someone touched his body, it would melt. Gustar realized that the monster was a slime, and since physical attacks did not work, he had no way to defeat it. He felt a burning sensation spreading across his back and asked why it was happening even though he was not touching the monster. The creature replied that keeping distance was already meaningless, as the entire area was its territory. It then wondered aloud whether it would be scolded for killing the Demon King and asked Gustar if that was acceptable, adding that it could not be helped. The monster declared that he would melt Gustar thoroughly. At that moment, Aura stepped in front of Gustar. Gustar demanded to know what she was doing there and told her that she needed to run. Aura activated her magic and turned the monster into stone. Shocked, the monster said there was no way something like that was possible. Aura told him that they were in a hurry and warned him not to stand in their way. Gustar then punched the monster once more and defeated it. Gustar asked Aura whether what she had said at the kindergarten about being weak had been a lie. Aura replied that it had been true, and that she would struggle even to win against Medel alone. Gustar then asked whether she had trained extensively. Aura answered that she had, and that in case of an emergency, she wanted to stand at the forefront alongside her people. That was the kind of person she wanted to be. Just then, Libel burst up from the ground, covered in dust, and asked Lady Aura if she was all right. Aura replied that instead of worrying about her, Libel should worry about herself, and she asked what had happened to the enemy from earlier. Libel said that she had defeated him, and that it had been easy. Hearing the word easy, Gustar mocked her, pointing out that she was completely beaten up. Libel immediately fired back, saying that Gustar was no better, and mocked him in return by saying that she had defeated her opponent on her own. Aura then told them that they needed to hurry forward. Meanwhile, Medel continued searching for Cross. She muttered that she would find him right away because she was always the one who found Cross. Elsewhere, the monster found it amusing that Cross was the first toy that had repaired itself so quickly. Pointing at Cross, he told him to entertain him more.